At the bottom, you can see at the bottom of your screen that we have another match on deck, and it's Thijs versus Orange, and the protection phase has happened, and once again we are back on par with kind of what we were expecting throughout. We are going to see protecting Priest on both sides for Thijs and Orange. Differing bans though, and that's because Thijs is playing Warlock. That Warlock is a Zoo. This is the first Zoo that we're going to see in the day, and that has brought out the ban from Orange.
Yeah, it stacks up very well versus the Priest from Orange's side. Has pretty good game against Druid. If you've played that matchup, you know the Druid side that can get quite dicey. And in my opinion, it's really not that bad versus Holy Wrath Paladin. Like, you have some starts that force them to have equalities very early on, and equality's not a card they're really keen on trying to keep in their opening hand. And to further compound that, Orange is playing the Zephyrus list of Holy Wrath Paladin, which means that there's only one copy of equality pretty commonly found in that deck. And so I think that Zoo for Thijs here was a wonderful bring that put a pressure point to Orange to have to ban that out. And it's just the way it's going to work.
Yeah, I know myself, you, and TJ were all practicing a lot of Zoo just because of the upswing in it this week, and not only liking its performance in several matchups, but also we were just jamming ladder games with it as well and doing very well. Like, I think TJ was just hanging around like top 25 legend, while myself and Abar were just hanging around kind of coaching him through some games.
Yeah, and then immediately when y'all left, he would go to Arena instantaneously to keep himself from playing on ladder.
Did that really happen?
Yeah, that really
I did not know. Okay, that's funny. I'm glad I know that now. That is a piece of knowledge that I appreciate.
Look, if he's gonna give me 3 Plague of Wrath on the Warrior chart, I'm gonna call him out on what's real here.
Exposed.
So I love the bring from Thijs this week. I think he recognized that that one step ahead that I often expect Thijs to have in these tournament settings is to have an edge over everyone else in the field. Like, that's where he's been finding his victories and his dominant tournament performance for years now, is to be one step ahead oftentimes during that deck building phase. I don't think he's really demonstrated that throughout Grandmasters yet, but this week I think you see it in full form, getting Zoo banned. Like, a deck that's been almost entirely gone from Grandmasters shows up and pulls a ban. Like, that's beautiful to see. Making Mummies gets banned, Zoo got banned. Like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, similar story to what we saw. I think if you bring a new deck, a kind of left field deck, something that we didn't see as part of the core meta game last week, and it ends up getting banned, you have to pat yourself on the back and say, okay, good read, nailed it. Like, I got my lineup right, I brought this deck, it was probably a risk, but it's put my opponent's lineup in a very awkward position and sucked out a ban from them, and I just get to play some of my luxury decks now, right? Like, Quest Shaman being in that category, I think. Like, something that you don't necessarily expect to be able to play going into every series. If you're protecting Priest, you're leaving that ban open for Shaman, which is perhaps just second on the list right now in terms of power decks in the metagame. And if you can pull out that ban on something that's just a little more left field, a little more polarized in terms of matchup, and get to play just that vanilla good deck, that's a win.
Yeah, and so that's where I believe the edge is at in this one. I do have my eye on Holy Wrath Paladin, though, because I think this is a deck that packs a pretty big punch versus Quest Shaman. I think that is a matchup that is like about as bad as I can imagine for Quest Shaman.
Admirable just does not want to say any matchup is bad for his baby, Quest Shaman. He just, like, he believes he's the smartest kid in his class, even though he's clearly an idiot. No, I'm not kidding. Quest Shaman is a very, very good deck, but it only has a couple of bad matchups, in my opinion. But yes, Holy Wrath Paladin is one of them, in my experience with the deck.
Yeah, it is really tough to actually defeat that deck. Like, as I said it in the first match, like, your early game is pretty fair. Like, 2-3 draw card is like the best thing that you have.
Yeah.
That's a very good card, but you're almost never doing anything with turn 1 if you do that. And then on your turn 3, you're looking at like Bog Slosher it sometimes as being like one of your premier plays. You're like, oh, I am shredding through this and getting to the quest as quickly as possible.
Yeah, what Quest Shaman doesn't do is just stack up 10, 12, 15 damage on the board very quickly and be extremely threatening to Holy Wrath Paladin, which is what you need to do.
It's funny, some of my initial builds, like prior to the balance patch, like I toyed with all sorts of stuff. I had like Microtech in there to make 2 1/1s, and I had like Bloodlust in the deck list because my goal was going to be make a bunch of tokens and Bloodlust and kill him.
You know your favorite card? Spring Chicken.
The 2/1 that deals 2 damage.
Have you ever played that in Quest Shaman?
I have not. It doesn't seem very good.
Okay.
Making tokens and Bloodlust, though, that was fine. That felt pretty solid. Good old-fashioned Priest mirror match.
I loved the excitement you managed to summon then, Admirable. It was good.
You got me fired up this morning.
You're a fine actor.
Don't talk to me like a child. I played Hamlet at Cambridge!
In the light's name.
What's the one drop here? Like, this has always perplexed me when I'm playing Priest. When I have both Northshire and Light Warden, I never have any idea which one of these is right and why.
In the Priest Mirror specifically?
Like, I feel like with extra arms, Light Warden becomes the play to me. Without extra arms, though, no idea.
I think leading out Light Warden makes a decent amount of sense here. You are slightly concerned as we kind of have the exact same dynamic we were fighting over a little bit in the first series, where you're facing down the threat of Wild Pyromancer, except this time your opponent doesn't have to coin it out. So I like 100%, if you played a Cleric, your opponent's going to play a Pyromancer, and then what do you do in that situation? I think that's the response that you're going to see with whatever one drop you play. But because the dynamic is reversed, Thijs can just respond to whatever he wants with coin extra arms if he wants to go down that line. And it's exactly what's going to happen.
And you're dead.
Well, okay then.
Well, he does have 2 drops now. A number of 2 X drops to place and play.
2 separate minions to play on this turn.
Yes, that require attention. Like, Nephroset Ritualist doesn't necessarily require attention. Northshire and Light Warden typically do, though. So I guess the question for Orange is, would you rather have 2 threats in play that Thijs is interested in answering at his pick? Or try to capitalize on perhaps a weak turn with landing the Ritualist in play, and then maybe slamming an extra arm somewhere?
Yeah, I don't think you can play the Cleric this turn. I think if you're playing minions, it is the Ritualist and the Light Warden. But the problem, like, that's moving forward to the idea of, like, turn 4, you have Cleric extra arms, but the problem is that's just not going to interact with the Light Warden that's going to remain on board, because you're not, realistically, you're not going to challenge it with these minions very often. But then the final pit that I fall into is like, well, suggest something better then, idiot. And like, you just can't. Like, this is the play. It's a bad play, but it's the best one available.
And so something I look at here is that Thijs would need to have a natural health buff that is not Divine Spirit here in order to fight against the board in its specific state. Otherwise, the Light Warden gets to live and it gets to fight back. Number 2 is if Thijs has a fight back turn and his minion is low on health, like, I could see Orange using Inner Fire as both an offensive and defensive tool, where you set the minion's attack to its health, and if it's at low health, it means that Nephroset Ritualist can actually trade in some circumstances.
Yep. I think, best case scenario, this play has some pan-outs where you get to challenge effectively. The problem is that those best case scenarios ignore Circle of Healing, Beaming Sidekick, Injured Tolvir, like the more arms, like so many things.
Sidekick is specifically the one, right? Because if Thijs has Circle of Healing, what that means is the Light Warden gets buffed. And so the Light Warden would fight back. Like, I think it was like pretty specifically Power Word Shield and Beaming Sidekick.
I've got more left in me.
Is there a reason those aren't next to each other? The damaged minions?
Not really, no.
Ritualist? Like, that has to be...
Yeah, I think they're just supposed to be next to each other.
Priest, to me, has stood out as the one deck that requires the highest level of technical play right now. That's the thing I love about Priest, is that it's very demanding of you to understand what's happening. Little things like that can come back and cost. It won't affect Thijs this game, I don't believe. But you got to be careful.
I wonder.
So Orange is just looking next turn. Ahmet Northshire.
Yeah, the Ahmet draw has given a little ray of hope over to Orange. Like, what he's done is just managed to slow down Thijs just a little bit, just by being annoying and playing his minions. And now he does at least have some kind of way to think he might be able to stick a minion next turn.
The feign on taking your time is to make your opponent think about you having options for silence, for topsy-turvy, Circle of Healing, etc. I think that this is one of the matchups where it's important to deliberately take your time. Soddle's face is wincing up to that circle of healing draw, and that is correct. You are free to continue wincing.
Is someone injured?
I will do so, thank you very much. I was awaiting your permission.
Yeah, you have a curious look on your face now, and I'm wondering why, because this looks right to me.
It does. No, it is right. I was just taking a look at like using the extra arms, or sorry, the more arms remaining first, but it didn't enable a good trade with the beaming sidekick. You would get the same amount of card draw because you'd injure a minion on your side, but it's just not a good looking trade.
And that circle was the last hurrah. Orange no longer can check the Light Warden properly.
Which means he can't just develop stats into the board because the Light Warden just eats the stats.
What
Best
option
case
do you have?
scenario. Yeah.
I see a
Yeah, when I say can't, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying it's not going to work.
That just sounded like one of the most British things I've ever heard. You're free to do it. I'm just telling you what the outcome will be. Failure.
Yes. So what do we have? 10, 19, 20, 22 this turn by my count?
I don't know how you calculated that so fast.
Consider.
I guess because you've played a lot of Priest, but
Yeah. There's also a distinct possibility that I was just wrong. It's very easy to be fast and wrong.
you're free to be wrong as well. Like you don't need my permission to do any of those things.
You win.
Thijs picks up a quick game 1. The 1 drops so important in the matchup. You have to be able to get board development, both protect it and capitalize simultaneously. That's why the deck slots, you don't have room, as I was talking about earlier, you don't have room to play like Power Word or Shadow Word Pain or Forbidden Words or anything like that. Every piece in the deck has a very specific purpose, and they all matter.
And it's just yet another reason why this Bomb Sam D version of the deck has become so much more popular, because then when you come down to the Priest Mirror, because you've put that late game engine in your deck, you've also put more 1-drops in your deck, which means you more consistently draw 1-drops. You more consistently are able to just spew out your hand, turn 1, 2, 3, and just get the board, because those are the turns that matter against Priest in the Priest Mirror. It's so hard for Priest in any matchup to come from behind back onto a board. So what that means is that the Mirror is a really, really ugly, bizarre place where first uncontested board just wins the game. And if you're going to win that kind of matchup, you need as many 1-drops as possible, so that player who gets the first uncontested board state is you.
I played exactly 5 games of the Bomb Sam D Priest because I wanted to see how it felt. In 4 of those games, I played a beaming sidekick on turn 1, and it worked.
Yep.
Very bizarre.
Sign me up.
Very bizarre state for that deck to be in. We're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, it's going to be getting into game number 2 of Thijs taking on Orange. It's our 3rd match of the day, so we're at the halfway mark. Stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss what's coming up later.
Darker than they've ever been. As evil descends from the skies, the world cries out, how will we survive? Out of the hall of explorers, and up from the dusty tombs, they grab their whips and fedoras. These legends of the past know exactly what to do. There might be magic monsters, mummies in the markets, and ancient mysticism. But this league's gonna save the world.
My name is Tom Wahl, my handle is Viper.
A username is just one of those boring stories where it's a 12, 13-year-old kid makes his first WoW account basically. You gotta pick a username, taken. Is this Viper taken? Oh, Viper's possible, nice, okay, whatever. It's a generic name, it's fine. And then I just stick to it. Being Grandmasters means that I'm one of the top 16 players in Europe basically, right? Which is really worth a lot for me because I always want to be the best, I always want to be competitive, I always want to do well. That's just who I am. I always try to be open-minded. I try to test whatever decks are good. January in 2016 it was, I think. I had almost 3K games in a month, just playing Aggro Shaman and Miracle. I think I've also played an unhealthy amount of J Druid and the Dragon Combo Priest after that. I just love those powerful decks, I guess. Being second at Worlds, it's such a crazy feeling and I'm not sure if I really realize it at this point. Now I'm just looking forward to Grandmasters, I'm looking forward to performing well. I want to play on the big stage, I'm really looking forward to that.
My name is Alexander Malsh, you might know me as Colento. My username Colento is kind of random, I just took it from the MMORPG I was playing. It was the name of one of my characters. My favorite moment in Hearthstone is probably when I won the Game House Cup. It was one of my first tournaments I won and it probably was the first LAN I won, so it felt very special. So as for Grandmasters in general, I really like to play against people I know personally and I met before. I have respect for them. I think competing will be fun. Being in Grandmasters is a big honor. It's just a proof that I'm a part of best players in Hearthstone. It's not like I need it so much, I just know it myself, but it still feels kind of nice. I'll just perform well at Grandmaster League. I'll try to keep streaming and I just want to spend the rest of my time having as much fun as I'm having doing my hobby.
It's our third match of the day here at Hearthstone Grandmasters for the European region. I'm Nathan, that's Admiral Zamora. I'm joined by Simon Sottle Welch. And Sottle, we just saw a Priest Mirror go the opposite way with coin on that one. So what that tells me is that one drops the important measure of that one. But game number 2 is going to be getting underway. You can see the protects and bans in this one. What have you thought of the play so far today? I think a lot of the situations have been one player having the goods and the other one having to make tough calls the whole way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there's been 1 or 2 plays where maybe I would argue in terms of optimization, but that's always going to happen, right? Anyone viewing a game with a top-down perspective is going to have questions about, little increases in percentage here and there. But I think for the most part, it has just been kind of straightforward Hearthstone for the players who've had control of the games because they have just had that level of control of the game.
Yeah, I think when players have their backs against the wall, in a supremely bad spot, those are some of the most interesting spots to me because it's what can you cook up that matters?
Right.
What can you do? What can you visualize happening that puts you in a winning position? I can visualize what Orange can do that could put him in a winning position here.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What's that?
Coin and 2-drop.
If he doesn't, then this Evil Totem from Thijs is going to give him some game that he wouldn't necessarily have against Priest.
Now, that being said, I've seen a lot of Priest streams, and I'm thinking board control specifically in this one, and he mulligans extremely aggressively in this one, and Orange, whoa. That's interesting to me. I don't have enough reps on Priest. Dang it, I'm just going to have to play it. I see everyone mulligan differently with this deck. I see all sorts of crazy shenanigans happen. Is this a nod to the additional 1-cost minions in the deck?
I would suggest so, yes. But also, a coin Neferset into Neferset, which would have been his curve with your suggestion, because what are you going to do? Coin 2 and then pass the next turn? Like, that kind of feels ugly. Like, yes, that curve is really good against Evil Totem specifically. It's really not that great against a lot of other things in Thijs's deck. So I think this just saying like, what if Evil Totem happens? Like, whatever. I can just sometimes hit a 1-drop that allows me to deal with it anyway. And it's just worst case scenario here. He just kind of got an awkward Light Warden against a 0-2 with no target on the board to be able to heal. But I think Orange's mulligan makes sense. The other like maybe surprising part of it is that he keeps High Priest Armet Psychopomp, but in my experience playing Quest Shaman against Priest and playing Priest against Quest Shaman, like Psychopomp has been a very, very key card because they can deal 6, 7, 8 damage to one minion quite effectively, but doing it over multiple sources of damage to a Psychopomp minion is actually very, very tricky to do.
I think it's very well said. My head was on the Psychopomp keep specifically. Like, I'm not going to mulligan Amit. That's like literally why I built the deck.
There's a lot of lackeys in Thijs's future, and he is going to need a lot of lackeys to dig himself out of this. Thijs, I believe, is not. Yeah, he's not playing the one-of Earthshock, which is some people's answer to the hot question of Grandmasters Week 3. Which is, what is the 30th card in Quest Shaman? Everyone does seem to have a different opinion on it. Some people are running Earthshock as a nod to Priest, considering that Priest will be one of the most protected classes in the format, which they are right, and Earthshock does give you a lot of game and a lot of situations, not only against buffed up minions, but against Psychopomp minions, just against a Nausea Cleric that you can't answer just to deny card draw.
Yeah, I would say like cards 27 through 30 are still a question mark in the Quest Shaman lists. Like, there's some people running one Mind Control deck. There are people running 2 Giggling Inventors. There are people who are running no Giggling Inventors. There are people who are running former champs. Vice versa on those as well, like no former champs. Those are 3 of the slots I think that you have to toy with a lot in this list. It's just going to depend on what you're specifically attempting to face down.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think what I'd add is that most players, their decision on like whether they're playing Giggling Inventor or Former Champ or those cards that you describe, they're really confident about that. Like, they really think they're right and will tell everyone else they're wrong, but it's then that one last 30th card that everyone is somewhat unconvinced on.
Yeah. I will never be convinced of Former Champ. Test that card.
I play one.
Yeah, well, that's because you're stupid.
Well.
So am I. Yeah, Thijs is, he's been pushed into a corner very early on. This is a tough matchup for Quest Shaman. Like, I have found the ways that I win it are quite specifically with Wasp hands, where I'm able to get a bunch of lackeys rolling and then use Wasps to clear out important minions in play. A lot of times that relies on you getting shoot lackeys too.
Okay, that is an important lackey because it does now allow him to take down a lot of this board state.
Oh, it does. Wow, that is a massive difference.
Yep. Double rush lackey means he goes through the 2/5 and the Light Warden.
It does leave up a Northshire Cleric against a 1/1, though.
It does, but
just got to take the heat.
Do you have a better idea? Yeah.
I don't know if better idea is what I have. I do have a different idea, though.
There is little time.
Go on.
What if we... Well, it's way too complicated to talk about. I was hoping he was going to take a different line because I was just going to, you know, in my head say maybe Thijs is desperate enough.
But in my head, I was just going to wait and see what Thijs did, and then say that was going to be my play the whole time.
This does follow the same thinking though. So if in my head I wanted to try and draw for Wasp and then turbo to the quest completion, and then see if I can use the Wasp battle cry to pick apart something big, and then use the Sandstorm elemental battle cry to fight back against a board state that's there. You leave yourself super vulnerable to Wild Pyromancer and to Circle of Healing. But almost any way you go with this, you're going to be vulnerable to something. So, turbo completing quest, good. Halfway on the fight for board and leave something there, good. I think you need some board tension here to fight with. And so I think Thijs has an opportunity here where he doesn't necessarily need specifically Wasp to get out of this.
Yeah, I'm currently in an internal debate with myself about whether I like this more or less than killing the Light Warden. It's very similar. but you preserve a Rush Lackey as opposed to a Titanic Lackey, which might just be the kicker in terms of Thijs finding the better play here, because he then has a repeated answer to the board again for something else.
And that's exactly what I was thinking about, was preserving ways from hand to make a difference.
Yeah.
So in my head, I was finding ways from hand to make a difference. Thijs is preserving ways in hand to make a difference. And I think that's a really key part if he's going to come back in this game.
Right.
I'm wondering with that if Orange could have found himself a silence maybe to keep that Light Warden around.
I did consider the silence as well, yeah.
I mean, Orange has pretty much at length expressed to us a lot of his tougher spots and what he's been thinking about it. Like, he's been messaging Subtle and I specifically talking through thoughts. I would love to hear what he's thinking there on the silence. When is that going to be a factor and why?
You belong to the bar now.
I think if he silences... So he can do one or two things. He can silence and trade anyway, which doesn't really help him out because he's vulnerable to Sandstorm in that world. Or if he silences and goes face, then he just ends up walking into Mind Control tech and just leaving 4 minions on the board. And getting that 2-6 MCT'd is probably a good way to concede at this point.
True story. Ooh.
Speaking of concede...
Basena's pretty scary here.
I wonder.
Yeah, there aren't that many cards in the deck to activate it, but they do exist. Sandstorm Elemental and I think both Sludge Slurpers have been used.
You know that they have Rush Lackey in the hand is kind of what I'm thinking.
That's true.
Smart, I think, to make work of lackeys.
Yeah, I think Wasp is one of the few real fear cards that you have right now. The other, as mentioned last turn, is going to be that Mind Control tech, so I'm expecting this 3-1 to go bye-bye before the end of the turn. Ooh, okay.
This is kind of what I was thinking, too, as well, is that at some point you're just going to have to play into Mind Control tech. Like, that's just the nature of this matchup, right?
Don't know if that's true with Priest specifically. I think with this hand, maybe yes it is, and that's what prompts it from Orange, because if he gets MCT'd, 25% of the time the bad thing happens.
Yeah.
75% of the time, you're chilling, you move on. And even in the 25% of the time where the bad thing happens, you have Armet plus a bunch of 1-drops in your near future anyway to spew all over the board.
And so for me, this Acolyte of Pain says that he's thinking about Sandstorm Elemental to me.
Sure.
Like, this is the prime turn for your opponent to overload. They have a Vicena in play. This is the prime time for your opponent to use the Rush Lackey for the same reason. Draw some extra cards if that's going to be the case.
What?
Yeah, that's fair. I think on a simple level as well, if he wants to just play another minion and shut his eyes against Mind Control tech, which is very reasonable, it's not going to be any of the 1-drops while he has Armet in hand, so he might as well just go ahead and play it.
Oh, it stings to see it.
There's little time.
Just why Acolyte of Pain? Why is it so good against Sandstorm Elemental specifically?
So now it's overloaded and gets 4, and now he can double up the Battle Cry and get it to 6, which would have traded through the 2-6 to begin with. Are you going to fully take care of it? Okay. It's a fairly effective turn in the circumstances.
Why didn't we play the 3-3-1 first? That would have been a value trade?
3-3 would have come down, then he would have... Yeah, no, you're right. That's just better, I think?
Maybe he doesn't want damaged minions in play? That doesn't make any sense. There's going to be plenty of damaged minions in play.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to make a difference.
Yeah, I think it was just a really tough turn with a bunch of Bloodlust mechanics and Rush mechanics going on, and which Battle Cries you wanted to double and which you didn't, and Thijs just got it wrong, honestly.
He's about to just die. Like, Ahmet with 2 1s to back it up.
Yeah, there is going to be a whole pile of 7+ health minions on this board, and there's 2 Divine Spirits and a Fire in Orange's hand.
Get ready to hope that you draw a Mind Control text specifically, because you're overloaded for 1, so you can't Hero Power and Novice into it.
In the light's name. Hey, I got you, friend.
By the way, get the perfect steals. By the way, still hope Orange doesn't deliver lethal. And there's that silence.
Yeah, you're actually still just dead through Mind Control tech every time here, right?
With Orange's specific hand, yes.
Yeah. And that is not a Mind Control tech. And Mind Control tech was not going to save Thijs anyway, so we are going to a game 3 here very, very soon indeed. Mutate Madness, can that save Thijs? He's not even going to bother.
No.
Who can blame him? 28.
Priest getting the job done. Back-to-back game 1s, or back-to-back first wins for the players, rather. Securing the victory with Priest. This is the force to be reckoned with.
And Orange, like the gentleman that he is, handing over that final spike to the Cleric as well. The Cleric, she might not always deliver all the damage, but she is the card that does all the heavy lifting in the matchup. So 28, followed by 1. Orange knows who the MVP is.
Oh, yeah. Give her the killing blow. Also, that could just affect stats later down the road. You know, Blizzard's looking internally and it's like, wow, there's a lot of killing blows from Northshire Cleric. Maybe we need to change that card. Manipulation.
I used to tell when I streamed, I used to tell people that, like, if you wanted to get a deck or like a particular card nerfed, every time it got played, just concede immediately. So like the Blizzard internal stats, just like, whoa! Whenever this card gets played, the players just don't want to play the game anymore.
There's so many millions of games that take place, and it's just so unfeasible.
I was literally just trolling people.
God, I love that. I love massive trolling opportunities.
It's one of those things that sounds conceivable that I thought people might do. It was actually just a massive troll.
Yeah, and so now looking at the decks remaining here, I have to believe that Holy Wrath Paladin for Orange is just the deck. Like, he's going against Quest Druid and he's going against Quest Shaman next. And I feel like both of those positions are the edge to Holy Wrath Paladin. Like, Holy Wrath Paladin, I'm going to call back to the Blood Trail series. We saw him have an opportunity to seize a 67% chance to win the game, and he tried to opt for future and higher edge, and that did not work out for him. I feel like that position is common in the Druid matchup where you find yourself having to take pretty big risks, but I'm just totally okay with that. I think a 67% edge is fantastic. I'm always going to take that if I have an opportunity to. I think it's very difficult to foresee higher edges than that. And so for Orange here, I think that his lineup is built in a wonderful way. He's got Holy Wrath Paladin, Quest Shaman, Quest Druid on the other side. What more could you ask for?
I agree with all of those words. I think Holy Wrath Paladin, of the two decks, like maybe Druid is the one that can just get a bunch of pressure up and beat it down, but because they spend so little time, or so much time doing nothing, I should say, in the early game, so like the Paladin can draw so many cards uncontested just through that early game proceedings. And if the Druid's going to win, it's going to need them to do two things. One, be slow to get to the end of their deck so they can have the eventual win condition. And two, well, they're going to need them to not have the board clears to be able to answer the threats they can make. And if you don't pressure the Paladin and they're able to just freely, like, Christology, Novice Engineer, whatever, through the early game, well, both of those things then aren't true, right? Because they're drawing through their deck to get the clears and they're drawing through their decks to end the game with the Holy Wrath.
Yeah, you can see that's a very well-built lineup, I think, to take advantage of that situation. So I think Bandage went to Thijs, but kind of looking at that now, like, Thijs really needed to beat this Priest, and he just doesn't have anything left to do it with. Like, Quest Shaman, Druid up. That gets the win, then you're pinned by the last option from Orange. That's so smart. The lineups are making so much more sense to me now.
They're starting, like, I think we've seen, like, a week or two of just people like, I'm going to play some good decks, or I'm going to play, like, a lineup with a particular theme. Then we started to see this idea of, like, well, maybe I can soft target towards two different decks at the same time, start to come in around week 2. And now, as we get to week 3, I think we're starting to see, like, slightly more refined, step-by-step, this happens, then this happens, then this happens, then I have an edge, sort of kind of looking lineups.
That takes a while to find, too. You know, I think a large part of the reason why in Conquest specifically we've seen so many like linchpin decks come in where it's like, this deck does not work very well on ladder. However, on ladder, you're only seeing this one particular deck, and then you're seeing the secondary deck at the very, very top end at least. And then you come into a tournament setting, and it's like, Holy Wrath Paladin is always one of the big talks. in this particular metagame. And even in the last one, I think Holy Wrath Paladin had a lot of game to it as well. Just very interesting thing to see where it's like this deck is something like I play it on ladder and I go 50-50 the whole time. You know, play it here. Whew. I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, I can't ban it. But
there's always been a few loyalists that have been saying that like Holy Wrath Paladin has been the go-to deck, like even for ladder for some amount of time. Like essentially since Shivala became a card, there has been a slowly increasing number of Holy Wrath loyalists up until the point where now with Zephyrus in the deck, it just gets so much additional responsibility.
So Orange chooses to go with Druid in this one. His top end for win conditions, Elise the Enlightened in combination with Shepnomi. For Thijs, on his options were the Druid and the Shaman. And so I'm pretty interested that that Orange goes with Druid here. And the reason why I'm interested in it is because Thijs's Quest Shaman deck is featuring 2 copies of Former Champ.
Yes.
Former Champ, this is the one matchup where I do not have a problem with the card.
He doesn't even say, I like the card. I don't have a problem with the card. Yeah, okay.
Because I don't think you need it. I've heard a lot of talks that you do need it.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess I have not played against an elite Druid expert at this point, so it's hard to speak from that perspective. But in my experience, I feel like with Quest Shaman, I have had the edge in this matchup through very slow and controlled and deliberate play. There's a lot of check boxes you have to hit.
Yeah, so I think Orange's pick here is going to be very influenced by his opinion on 2 matchups, which is Druid versus Shaman and his Paladin versus the opponent's Druid. He will have a bigger sample size of what Holy Wrath Paladin looks like against Druid than we will, so maybe he has a differing opinion. This one, I do side with you, though. Like, I am on the Quest Shaman side of things, especially, as you said, with those former champs in the deck, which I am a bigger supporter of than Admirable is. Only a little bit. I just play the one. But I think against Druid, having 2 of them is a big deal.
It's a true story as well. You talk a lot more fondly of Pavel than I do. The former champ.
Yeah. Pavel's just the greatest. Any opportunity, I will extol the virtues of Pavel.
So Thijs here expending the Sandstorm Elemental on turn 2. I find that quite interesting. That card has felt important to me in the matchup.
I think maybe he just intends to play the curve and just says, well, it's not gonna die, and then I can just play the Brewmaster, get it back to hand.
Pretty confident Orange never using
Wrath here. And just say that's my 2 Battlecry activations now. And then I still have my Sandstorm Elemental.
Drink with me, friend.
It makes sense. Just wants to get on with it. Like, if your opponent's going to sit around doing nothing through their early game turns, the last thing you want to do is also sit around doing nothing because their deck is built to do that and yours isn't.
I mean, are they really going to Wrath a Sandstorm Elemental?
No. No, they're not.
That's where you got to be crazy like a fox.
How about...
I would have Wrath that Sandstorm Elemental. I would have read in that play like a book. This is going to be Bog Slosher or Brewmaster. I'm not letting that happen.
What I will say is that the actual bouncers themselves in combination with Sandstorm Elemental is actually how you use it to clear in the late game.
Yeah.
So having used a Brewmaster is actually a loss to your clearing power, just because 4 is a number that you do quite like to do against Druid, because Cenarius, for example, puts 4 health minions on board. So double up with the hero power, play a Sandstorm Elemental, bounce it back to your hand somehow, play it again is a pretty common play that you will see against Druid.
Yeah. Thijs here just moving on curve, looking at the Barista, I think.
Yeah, if he can get a Barista off on this board, then that is going to solve a lot of issues for him, because he will have that Brewmaster back for additional value. He'll also just have a bit of extra burst damage with the new Life Drinker. Orange not going to let that happen.
Crystal Merchant just speaks to me. That is exactly how I feel when I draw a card.
Is that Mutate off the top? It is.
That could be the Mogu.
I'm pretty interested in an 8-drop Admirable.
What 8-drop specifically?
Right now, just big stats. Doesn't matter. But, the biggest potential nut outcome that I've had from rolling into an 8-drop in this deck is when you get the big warrior rhino thing, not the spirit of the rhino, the big boy that draws a Akali, draws a rush minion, buffs it by +5/+5. So you have Giggling Inventor in play. You evolve the 2/1 into the Rhino, and then it draws your Mogu Flesh Shapers, which cost 0 because you have Giggling Inventor in play, but they've been buffed +5/+5.
What about Katrina Muerte? That is so good with the Barista. You get a Life Drinker in play.
That is actually crazy.
You're
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like if the Katrina sticks around, like how greedy can you get with the Barista? Can you just make so many Life Drinkers that, like that's the path you go?
We're just going to boil every matchup down to just make as many Life Drinkers as you can and play them. Like, that's just how Admirable wants to play every Quest Shaman matchup.
Now, how about...
For Orange, I think this needs to be a 2-turn setup. I think if you press a panic button here, you're going to get got. Like, that's just not going to work. I think this is Nourish, set the War Druid Lodi, and then look for a big clear.
Like, not... You're saying not Poison Rush it into the
Sure.
Katrina.
I do
Just
not want to
leave it.
Poison Rush it.
Oh. I am terrified by that proposition.
As long as the War Druid Lodi gets in play this turn, I'm happy. This shuts off the Barista on the instant. This actually is stronger, I think, because it shuts off the Barista instantaneously, and because it also shuts off just something like Former Champ just being a big issue because it's a 5/5. Like,
I agree with that.
It's just too much that can happen on that following turn.
And this card, by the way, we've talked about it a lot just in stealth form as a spell damage minion in a lot of matchups. This matchup, it is the biggest terror. Like, it sucks having to load up minions as Shaman into this. It's where you really like start digging for lackeys to find like Plague of Murlocs, for example, just to transform it and get it off the board.
Thijs is having a tough time just activating Quest. Mind Control Tech, important down the road in the matchup.
Yep.
Novice Engineer, he needs to find additional gas. Can't play the Life Drinker right now. Like, you're going to have to sacrifice one of these battle cries and figure it out. And if I'm in Thijs' position, I'm looking at sacrificing the Mind Control Tech.
I think you just totem and then Novice Engineer Barista next turn.
That feels like it's too slow to me.
I wonder. There is little time.
Like, I feel like I need to force my opponent to use their spells with the Lodi in play. I want them to fear what I can do. And the sooner they're gone, the sooner I can make impact.
Whoa. So hold on. So talk through this with me for a second, because you play an extra 3/3 this turn, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm assuming your intention of holding on to the Novice is that you want to double up the draw on the Novice. But isn't that equally slow? Because you then spend next turn pressing Hero Power Novice Engineer.
I think
Like,
it's...
My play puts a 4/5 into play next turn.
I think the idea for me is that I want my opponent to have to spend this turn doing this, and then I want to find cards that matter.
Okay.
And so the Barista, while it is finding cards that matter, like I want to find them specifically.
Do you know a card that really matters? Mind Control Tech.
It can, yeah. I want to find Former Champ for next turn if I'm in Thijs' spot. I want a 1-2 punch where I put a ton of heaping stats in play. And I think that's where we're differentiating. Like, you're looking at waves of pressure, and I'm looking at the spikes of pressure. So it's about which one of those two is more impactful, I think.
Because you also just still draw the same amount of cards. Or actually, you draw more cards by guaranteeing the Novice into Barista line
It's true,
over time.
but that's going to be 2 turns away
Yeah.
for the Former Champ, and I want the Former Champ very next turn. I think he should be playing another Novice here. We got 2 Former Champs in the deck.
There is little time. What to do?
You belong to the bomb now.
Free Nourish turn.
Yup. Absolutely no pressure really represented from Thijs this turn.
Blood Mage to add to the next Starfall.
Yeah. That is a 7+4 Starfall.
Just Ultra Meteor.
Yeah.
Now, how about...
Good luck making a board into that.
What if you floop the Lodi?
I think that's something you consider in the matchup for sure.
I mean, that has to be what he's thinking about right now.
Yeah.
Do I want to draw the card off Blood Mage, or do I want to second Lodi in play. And if the first Lodi's that much of a terror, like the second one has to be
Right.
about equal, right?
I don't think you put 2 into play at the same time for the reasons I was talking about earlier. Like, the only out the Shaman has anyway is, like, Plague of Murlocs type stuff or Earthquake. Orange disagrees.
That's 2 in play at the same time. I love it.
Really?
And I don't want to attack with either of them. I'm okay with attacking with one, but I'm really greedy at the same time.
So, hang on. How much spell damage does he have exactly?
Oh, that's kind of clever.
He has +1, +2, and then he has +3 from the Blood Mage next turn. So, okay, if Former Champ comes down right now, on any size board, he can nuke the whole thing with Starfall because he's played the other Loti in play.
That's one of the reasons I didn't want to expose the Lodi, but, you know, getting chipped for 3 more damage, that is very important. You don't want that to happen.
No real resource lackeys here.
There's nothing to fight with.
No rush, no damage, no spells. No way to kill a 3-1.
I hope you like my invention.
I think his turn was too weak. Oh my gosh, he would have found the former champ this turn as well. But Orange set up for that even. He set up to be able to fight against former champs specifically.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's smart. I think even though generally I will stick to the statement of like you shouldn't generate multiple Lotis at the same time because it kind of just plays into their answer. Specific situations break rules in Hearthstone. I think Orange found a specific situation that broke a rule.
He's a rebel.
Can't tell him what to do.
Oh, 2 Lotis is so good. It's just so much damage.
Yeah, when your opponent makes 2 lackeys that can't kill him.
What if... Time grows short.
Ah,
I like this.
that's so smart.
I think anything else would just feel like a waste of resources. Like, it's easy to get distracted by how shiny the numbers on all the damage spells are,
Yeah.
but, like, in terms of what they can do with even just 1 point of spell damage, like, killing a couple of Novice Engineers is not it. Like, it can do a lot better than that.
Yeah. So that's the key. Just dangle some keys in front of me and I'm distracted. Some keys?
That's awkward. Deals 1 damage.
2 damage in a turn.
Is it 2?
Spits for 2.
Am I dumb?
That's not why, but
I
yes.
am dumb.
Yeah, and when the Wasps have to simply fight for board, I always feel bad about this, but Thijs isn't wrong. He has to fight for board.
Yep.
That's another reason I think that you can give away the first mind control tech in Thijs' spot, because I think Orange is the kind of player who he'll find ways to account for that.
Yeah, sure. I think if your opponent spends the whole game playing around your mind control techs, that buys you a bunch of time to do other stuff that isn't mind control tech.
Yeah, he's doing it anyway, though. Played around the second mind control tech in the previous turn.
Wait, what would he have done that
What
played into
if-
the second mind control tech?
Well, I mean, there's a number of things that he wouldn't have done, is kind of the point I'm getting at.
Okay.
What do you think about the shiny swipe here?
Looks better than it did last turn, but still somewhat
What
imperfect.
if-
You'd have to Blood Mage with it.
Yeah, thinking like Howl, Blood Mage,
Seems good.
base.
Time grows short.
Says he wants more cards. I don't blame him. And he really wants that Blood Mage, I think, to try and fight back in the right spot. This is just also very strong.
Well, there is that Sandstorm, and there's one of those 4 health looking board states that I was describing, but the bouncers are gone.
Yeah.
Barista too expensive to do with hero power activations as well.
I thought Sato was going to mention it when I winced earlier at the Bog Slosher. I had a very, very upset looking face. I think this is one of the strangest matchups that I play, where I feel like my cards are doing more specific things than usual.
Float like a butterfly.
Is the Sandstorm coming down alongside this?
I don't think it can.
Why not?
What is it doing?
Killing a 5-2? Oh!
Mutate can certainly come down, though.
Okay.
Little time.
Is it going to do better than kill a 5-2 this game? I don't think it is. Not with all the bouncers gone.
You're probably right. Yeah, you're right. I didn't want you to be, but you are. Oh, that's smart. You should get the fireball and then
Get
you
the
can
fireball
burn to an
first.
8. And that's a good 8.
Oh! I was going to argue the point for a second about like 5-7 into an 8 drop. How big an improvement is that on average compared to, you know, 1 drop a 1-1 into a 2 drop, for example? But I think the big difference is like 1-1 into a 2 drop isn't going to play around Starfall or Swipe. 2 drop into a, or 2-2 into a 3 drop isn't going to play around Starfall or Swipe, so he might as well just do it on the big one. That mind control tech could just be about to change everything.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the poisonous expenditure on the Lodi at this point as well. It survives through the attack on the 214.
Let's see.
You know, you have a number of ways to get rid of the Divine Shield on this. But, I mean, you have to tempt fate first, right? You got plenty of mana to work with afterwards. And all your goals right now involve shutting down the board.
Oh! Orange just nods. So yeah, what? Like, that was always going to happen.
And Thijs just nods too. Just very, very different type of nod.
Yeah. This is a big Shudder Walk built up on Thijs' side, though. Mind Control Tech and 2 Sandstorms in there. Orange does continue to play around that Mind Control Tech, as you were saying. Quite right to do so, of course. Not just because of the second Mind Control Tech, because of the Shudder Walk I'm describing. I think... It's a side note, 2 Hidden Oasis is the preventative card from Zephyrus being active right now in Orange's deck.
You just have to find either copy. Anubisath Defender as well.
Oh, wow, okay.
So Thijs is using the Shudder Walk as reload at this point. He says, I can push past this, I just need to have stuff to do in order to push past this. And the fact that his 5-5 gets generated first means that it has now gone to the winds. Yeah. I was hoping that the 2-drop gets summoned and that it gets bounced, or that all the bounces activate first.
We must cleanse the Sunwell.
I think the Shudder Walk demonstrates the importance of duplicating the Sandstorm Elementals as well.
Yep.
Now, I've gotten to weird positions where I've been given enough time due to lack of pressure on the other side that I have gotten my pool with 6 Sandstorm Elementals in it. It's difficult, it's long-winded, it's super complicated.
Let's see.
But this is the kind of deck that's got the fighting power, I think, to make those things happen. And now with Orange, an opportunity to take massive initiative. He's going to look for just that.
I do wonder about that Shudder Walk timing. The only alternative play, really, that I guess he had was to like Hero Power, Cable Rat, Barista, which then slows down his Shudder Walk a lot because he then has to spend all of those resources that he's just picked up. But he does have kind of a hold on Orange in the Orange couldn't pop off super hard while the threat of Shudder Walk and the second Mind Control Tech was staring back at him. Now, Shudder Walk gone, second Mind Control Tech gone, Orange can do literally whatever he wants for the rest of the game. But I think with the only alternative line I'm suggesting probably not being good enough, Thijs was just kind of forced into the Shudder Walk there and got the bad outcome from it. 'Cause it didn't even really end up being like a good hand refill in terms of things that are going to have an impact on the board.
I mean, it ended up being a pure liability, but just burned the other card he needed. So he got rid of the first Mind Control deck activation.
Yeah.
And you, and you.
You could have all the 2/6s in the world. This isn't going to work. No burn pressure, no killing blow with Shudder Walk. I mean,
There is little time.
I have no idea how he's going to fight Nomi boards.
He has to throw every point of damage at face and hope that Orange's Hidden Oasis are in the bottom 6, which they are for some reason.
I don't think that works.
He had what? He had Life Drinker, 2 Kobold Lackeys. That's 14. Fireball. That's 20. All right, yeah, he's still short.
Well, he does have Barista still in hand.
And 2 Ethereal Lackeys.
The problem is you're just staring down at so much damage on the
I know
opposite
it's not a realistic play. It's just somewhat comical that that's like the one line that he may be getting away with here, just because the Hidden Oasis are buried in Orange's deck.
Yeah, Orange isn't. He's not even going to really need the Nomis in this position. He's just pulled ahead. Like he gets to just Starfall and play big stuff if he wants.
Yeah. Orange still minimum 2 cards away from that Zephyrus being active.
Yep.
That is pretty crazy with 4 cards left.
What if?
Bottom 4 cards: 2 Hidden Oasis, 2 Anubisath Defender.
Yeah. And the Anubisath Defender in particular, like think about just the tempo that could have been in various spots in this matchup as well. The Nourish turn, the first Starfall turn, there was just an additional 3/5 hitting the board.
Yeah, I think that does bring him to think about Crystal Merchant Blood Mage instead of the Oasis Surger.
All right, yeah, I like it.
Oasis Surger is your final responsive tool. This way you get to draw at least 1 card. You'll get the second one very often, and that'll activate.
Okay, so realistically what Thijs now has to do is find all of the Earthquakes he can gather.
Yeah.
That is his actual real-life win condition at this point.
By the way, stay alive. Which with a 4-11 and a 5-8 on the other side, not looking so easy.
Nope.
I'm looking at Life Drinker to sustain myself and Ethereal Lackeys, and then level some stuff up.
Of course it's the right way.
Has to play a card first.
Nothing. Power.
Shock?
Shock.
No.
There is little time.
Again, has to spend a card before the next Lackey. So he just goes ahead and Earth Shocks.
Ancestral Healing.
There's a big whiff again. Just some garbage, to be perfectly honest.
I mean, anything that wasn't perfect looked like garbage.
Yeah, that was my standard. And we're live.
I don't see Zephyrus Lethals.
Nope.
Ooh, hang on.
Not seeing it either.
If?
If you innervate Elise and play Zephyrus, what does he give you, though?
Innovate Elise.
So
Well,
then you put 2 copies of Zephyrus in your hand.
Yeah. But so you Elise first, and then you innovate the Zephyrus afterwards, and then you would have 4 remaining.
Now how about?
So if you got
You're
exact-
just begging for a Defender of Argus at that point, I'm telling you.
Yeah, I think for Orange, you just saw a lot of wacky stuff take place. You don't know what's necessarily in Thijs' hand. You don't want to be surprised by things. I think you take a safe line here.
Yeah.
Do some cleanup work, pay your dues, and secure a victory. It is almost impossible. It is virtually impossible for him to lose in this spot. He's just got everything checked.
And for Thijs, he is out of cards to play that have any impact on this situation whatsoever.
I wonder.
A barista, far left, almost buried off screen with how dead it's become in this hand.
It's getting backed up. Too many orders coming in.
I do wonder whether it could have had an impact earlier on.
I wonder.
Thijs is going to fight it out, but I think he knows it's not good enough. Without even thinking about it for a second, I struggle to imagine a world where this isn't lethal to Zephyrus.
Your wish is my suggestion.
This Master Spell does it, right? Amongst various other things.
Like just about every
just
every
a
buff card.
Hearthstone card. Zephyrus, please give me a card from the classic set. There's one. That kills my opponent.
2-1 victory to Orange, who desperately needed one, and now brings his match score up to even with Thijs afterwards. He brings himself to 2 and 3, drops Thijs to 2 and 3, and that now pads that total where that, I keep forgetting what you call it, the specter.
The grim specter of relegation.
Yes, like that's not necessarily looming over Orange's shoulder anymore. He like hid behind a corner real quick and it's looking for him again. It's looking for everybody who's below that playoff line almost. And so for now, he's done some, I think, fancy footwork here to circumnavigate the situation. And piling Druid, I would say, to a very high quality there on Orange's side. He understood the matchup from so many different angles where under the normal circumstance I've seen that matchup played, there's a lot of checks and balances to go through. And I think he made great use of his loadies. I think he proactively loaded boards very properly. I think he timed his removal super well, and I loved everything I saw from Orange in that game.
Yeah, and again, I called this out at the start of the day. The Orange was a surprise to me to be at 1-3 because I would love to see him do incredibly well. I think he'd be a very, very fitting winner even for the second season because he would represent Grandmasters in the way they should be represented. People who care, people who appreciate what they've been given here by becoming a Grandmaster and are willing to work every single day to maintain it. That is what Orange does. That's what Orange personifies.
Indeed. So let's have a winner's interview with that man himself. Orange, can you hear us?
I can. Thanks a lot for the kind words, Subtle.
Oh, you heard all that? How embarrassing. oh, gosh.
Yeah, he'd hate to say all that to your face.
No further questions. Just get rid of him. Jeez.
I knew that would embarrass Subtle.
How are you doing today, Orange? You picked up a very impressive-looking win here, and this was a much-needed one for you.
Yeah, now I'm doing well. I was not doing very well after the first game. I don't think that's something that's being talked about enough, or I know you casters talk about it, but I don't think the players talk enough about it. But the stress between first and second season and now in relegation is on the line. It really gets to you sometimes, and for me that was certainly the case after game one. I was feeling incredibly stressed after losing that game one, especially after doing a minor mistake that I think might have costed me the game. I think that's something we will see a lot going into the later weeks of the season, that when nerves starts hitting for the players that are close to relegation, because I could feel it, and we're like in the beginning of the third week. But yeah, at the same time, I'm also super relieved that I managed to pull through and get the win after that. But that was a very stressful match. I'm pretty happy you guys couldn't see my cam because I wasn't really at my best there for a while.
So two questions. First, clarify what you think the mistake was in the first game for me, just real quick.
I think I should have, now I haven't had time to look back at it.
Right.
Just finished. But I think I should have gone the Ritualist instead of the Pyromancer onto, because that way I do it. Like, coin extrams is like one of the bigger things in like when the priest misses his 1-drop on one, as I did. But it's also just a one-off, and Ritualist has better late game value, I think, most of the time. We playtested the priest mirror a bunch previous to this match because we knew it would came up, and I don't know, I still haven't really wrapped my head around it, but I knew the game could have played out differently if I just played Ritualist instead of Pyromancer turn 2.
Okay, and then so our other question was about the queue in the last game where you chose to go with Druid over the Holy Wrath Paladin. Can you just go through your thought process going into that?
I mean, I don't. This was one of the things too. Like, I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't know how people look at the Druid versus Shaman matchups mainly, and I also don't know exactly what people have for percentage on. He had Druid left too.
Yes.
And I don't know what percentage people have on Holy Wrath Paladin versus Druid. So I'm kind of just gonna leave that question there. But I was surprised to see Shaman queue twice. I can say that much.
That's a perfect answer because I said during the cast, this depends on two things. Orange's opinion on the Shaman versus Druid matchup and Orange's opinion on the Paladin versus Druid matchup. And you refuse to answer any of it. Perfect. Thank you.
I think that's cool. It means there's something to hide.
Yeah, that's good.
I like that there's something to hide. That interests me.
I respect it.
And so I kind of want to just revisit your whole season and talk about that. You talked about the stress management, and in season 1, I felt like that pressure was still on you there. How have you managed to handle stress over the years? Because I know that competition to you specifically has always been super paramount importance on doing your best personally.
Right. I've been pretty good at handling stress. Like I do think that's one of my strengths, that I'm usually good under pressure, which is why this season has been like, of course I feel the pressure, everyone does, but I've been able to handle it pretty well, I feel like. But it's different. Like season 1 is different. It's like you go there to win the tournament and that's all on the line. I've never really played with like what I do for a living, like on the line, which is basically what it feels like. I've never really played with like a lot of like not losing stakes, like having stakes and like going in with something and losing it if I do badly. That has not really been a thing throughout the years, and that is very different than just like going in with the eye on the prize and like winning the tournament. Now I also, especially after the 1-3 start, like gotta look at, God, I really hope I don't lose my job, because that's basically what it is. It's scary, super scary.
It is. I have nothing to ask that I think we'll get a better answer than that. I think that's the perfect place to leave it. Orange, thank you. Hope to see you again next week.
Well played.
See ya.
Next week, so you're hoping he loses his next match?
Oh, yes. Yeah, after he like exposed me on camera just then, yeah, I hope he loses. Screw that guy.
Yeah. Take that, Orange.
Genuinely, I mean every word of what I said in the first place. And I think like if Orange keeps working as hard as he does and takes his job, what he does for a living, important phrasing just from Orange to really drive the point home. If he keeps taking it as seriously as he does, then over time, over multiple weeks, that extra work, that extra dedication that he puts in over some of the other players is going to just shine through, and he's going to rise up that ranking.
Hard work pays off. Time and time again. I'm a shining example of how stupid you can be and how hard you can work and still somehow manage to be somewhat successful. Viper versus Kalento is our 4th match. Speaking of people who work hard and are successful, Kalento has, I think, feigned this thing that he doesn't work very hard, but I've seen we've all seen like the standard that Kalento sets, right? Like he used to stream and play the game a ton, and to him it was just easy. He's like, well, you play it and you figure it out, and then you make the decisions and they're easy. Like he's said that in media pieces, that Hearthstone is easy. Okay, I very disagree with that. And his standard, I think, of working a lot is far above and beyond what you see from a lot of the players who are in the competitive scene. Like for him, a lot is a ton. And for Viper, that's just been like what his whole career in Hearthstone has been about, is hard work and continuing to find new ways to gain an edge over players.